Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. April 26th, 2018.
The Kuhner Report is powered by Kelly Financial Services. Cleaning up your financial bull. Get the peace of mind that you deserve at Kelly Financial Services.
105 here on the great WRKO. Okay, my friends, a lot to talk about, I promise. Later this hour, Dr. Ronnie Jackson bows out as Trump's nominee to head the Department of Veterans Affairs. An absolutely disgraceful, slanderous smear campaign that was waged against him. We're going to have that. And the next hour, Yawkey Way. It's gone. It's being renamed or reverting back to what it used to be called. We're going to have all of this, so much more. But first, I've got a column up. I'm urging all of you to please read it. It exposes James Comey for not only his utterly incompetent leadership of the FBI, but for the crimes that he committed while he headed the FBI. And as I lay out in my column, he needs to go to jail. He has committed numerous crimes, especially leaking classified information to we now know multiple sources to multiple people. Crime after crime after crime. He is now in legal jeopardy. I lay it all out there in my column. Please go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. Click on menu, Kuhner's Corner. That's where all my columns are. Comey the Criminal. I urge you to read it, pass it on to as many people as possible. We need to counter the mainstream media narrative of who Comey is. He's not St. James Comey, the Boy Scout. He's a liar, a leaker, and a criminal. And it's time he was exposed. Okay. The Kelly Financial Services poll question of the day. Will the U.S. pull out of the Iran deal? You can vote on my Twitter page, not should the U.S. pull out, but do you think we will pull out? If you believe the answer is yes, A. If you believe the answer is no, B. At the Kuhner Report, so go to my Twitter page, at the Kuhner Report, Kuhner, or you can go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhner, if you want to vote. So, French President Emmanuel Macron was in Washington, a very high-profile steak dinner with President Trump, Melania Trump. At the heart of the discussions was obviously the Iran deal. President Trump has now put in a self-imposed deadline of May 12th. By May 12th, he wants to make a decision. Are we in or are we out? Emmanuel Macron is urging the president desperately to stay in the deal. In fact, German Chancellor Angela Merkel will be in Washington later this week and this weekend. She's going to give Trump the exact same message. The Europeans want us to stay in the deal. As you know, the Iran nuclear deal was the crown jewel of Obama's foreign policy. It was negotiated by Jean-François Kerry, his then Secretary of State, with the full backing of the dear leader. It is a disaster. Trump ran against the Iran deal. He has promised to tear up the Iran deal. And now he is on the cusp of potentially doing that by pulling out of the Iran deal. Now, to me, the reason is obvious why we should pull out of the deal. It's a horrible deal for many reasons. Number one, it gave the mullahs over $100 billion. In particular, under Obama, to me, one of the great scandals of his presidency, frankly, one of the great crimes of his presidency, we shipped over $1.7 billion in cold, hard cash, in pallets, for the mullahs to use, and they've used it to sponsor Hezbollah, to sponsor Hamas, to sponsor terrorism, to build up their military, and of course to funnel that money into their clandestine nuclear program. To me, the bigger critique I have of the deal is a simple one. It doesn't block Iran from getting the bomb. It ensures and paves the way for Iran to get the bomb. By the deal's own admission, Iran will have the bomb in 9 years. 10 years was last year. Now we're already down to 9 years. Many of their top secret nuclear sites are not covered in this deal. So while there are some UN inspectors looking at some of the sites, the really dangerous one that's going on underground, that the world doesn't know what's happening. And so I believe that they continue to build the bomb, they continue to enrich their uranium, and they continue to buy up and stock up their intercontinental ballistic missiles. This is a regime that threatens to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. This is a regime that is now bent on creating a Shiite empire across the Middle East. In fact, they want to create an empire from Tehran all the way through Baghdad in Iraq, stretching across Syria through Damascus, all the way into Lebanon, including Beirut, right on Israel's border. So as the Iranians are now flexing their military muscles, it was Obama and Kerry who essentially nuked up the mullahs. And what Trump is rightly saying is, our goal should not be to appease the mullahs. Our goal should be to contain the mullahs. And so if we pull out of this nuclear deal, as I hope we do, then this will now enable the United States to reimpose tough, crippling economic sanctions upon Tehran, upon the Iranian regime, squeeze that regime, and prevent them from being able to get access to the kind of nuclear missile technology that they need to complete their nuclear weapons program. It will also, I believe, give a further incentive to the Iranian people who despise the theocracy of the mullahs, who are sick of 40 years of Islamo-fascist rule. And it will, I think, spur them, encourage them to start rising up against their oppressors and the morality police that has been enslaving that country ever since the Islamic Revolution of 1979. And yet, as President Trump says he is seriously thinking about walking away or pulling out of the deal, listen now to this. In a stunning call today, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is now urging all of the Muslim nations of the world to unite against what he calls the bully, the United States. And not only is he calling for a massive pan-Muslim alliance to confront the great Satan, America, the leader of the Revolutionary Guard, one of their top generals, has now openly threatened the United States that should we pull out of the deal, Iranian forces will start attacking and sinking U.S. warships in the Mediterranean and in the Persian Gulf. In other words, they're threatening to attack us, attack our forces, and attack our troops in the Middle East if we decide to pull out of this nuclear deal. In other words, they're trying to blackmail us. This is bullying and thuggery and gangsterism. And as I told my wife, Dr. Grace, this morning, we're just talking about the news, who the hell are the Iranians to dictate to us whether we can stay or leave a deal? If we don't think the deal is in our best interest, if we think the deal gave away the store, which it did, if we think Obama made a catastrophic mistake, now they're going to tell the United States, they're going to lecture us, they're going to threaten us that we can't act in our own best interests? We haven't declared war on Iran. We're not bombing Iran. We're just walking away from a nuclear deal. That is, by the way, one of the worst deals, I'm telling you, that was ever made in the last 100 years. It gave the Iranians everything. It gave the Shia terrorists everything, and it gave us nothing. Absolutely nothing. Trump should walk away, should have walked away from it the first day he was in office. And now they're going to threaten to blow up our warships? Now they're going to threaten to kill and launch terrorist attacks against our consulates, our embassies, our forces in the Middle East because we decide to walk away from a bad, horrible deal? No, 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 no. No, 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 no. In fact, if I were the president, I would say, you know what? Macron and the Europeans are saying maybe I should offer a new deal, a different deal. A deal that is a bit more comprehensive, that maybe gives us more guarantees, that maybe will also limit your terrorist activities. But you know what? I'm not going to give you now a new deal. You want to threaten our warships? You want to call for a Muslim alliance against the United States? This is how you want to treat us? No problem. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Right here. Here's the deal. There you go. There you go. Suck on that for a while. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. That's exactly what I would do if I were President Trump. Walk away from this deal. It was a disaster then. It's a disaster now. And reimpose tough, crippling sanctions on the mullahs in Iran. It is time that the mullahs learned that there's no longer the dear leader in power. The days of appeasing and enabling radical Islam are over. There's now a patriot in the White House, an American in the White House, somebody who will not put the interests of Islam first, but put the interests of America and the West first. Listen now to President Donald Trump in an interview that he gave this morning on Fox's Fox and Friends, saying the mullahs know they're dealing with somebody very different from Barack Hussein Obama. Roll it, Jared.
Iran is a real problem for this country. The president made a horrible deal. When I say the president, I'm talking about past administration, made a horrible deal, giving $150 billion, given $1.8 billion in cash, in actual cash, carried out in barrels and in boxes from airplanes. It's inconceivable, $1.8 billion. And all they do is scream death to America, death to America. And by the way, they're not screaming it so much anymore. They were screaming it with him. They don't scream it with me. We haven't seen their little boats circling our ships in the ocean lately because they know if they do circle the ships, they're not going to be there very longer.
So let me ask you this. Should the United States pull out of the Iran deal? Or will it risk a possible war and confrontation with Iran? And will the United States pull out of the deal? The deadline is May 12th. It's quickly approaching. Trump is under a lot of pressure from the Europeans, France and Germany in particular, to stay in the deal. What will the president do? And what do you think he should do? 617-266-6868 is the number. Joe in, is that Millis? Yes, okay. Joe in Millis, you're up next. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, Joe.
Love the show. First-time caller.
Welcome, Joe. Welcome.
Thank you. I think he should pull out of the deal. France and Germany have, after the sanctions were lifted and Iran got their big payday, you know, a lot of companies from France and Germany made deals with Iran to sell them a lot of stuff. So by pulling out of the deal, it thwarts those deals that were made with companies from those two countries. So that's why you see the pressure from the two leaders of those countries on Trump. I think that the first time they shoot a paperclip at us, we should sink one of their ships.
Joe, I'm just curious, do you think the Iranians are bluffing? It's just bravado and tough talk. You pull out, we will shoot down your ships. Hala, 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 hala. You know, we will kill American forces. Do you think this is just, bluff and bluster from the Iranians? Or do you think they actually would do something as stupid and suicidal as that?
I think it's a mild bluff. They're hoping that some of their proxies will do some dirty work for them. But I definitely think it's more of a bluff. It'll be playing right into the hands. The best thing that could happen for the Muslim population is for Iran to bow out.
I agree, Joe. I agree very much. Thank you for that call. Good call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends. You know, when Macron was visiting Trump, and I saw all the pomp and the pageantry and the toasts, and there he is trying to urge President Trump to stay in the deal. You know what I honestly thought? The French appeased the Nazis and the fascists in World War II. They surrendered to the fascists then, and they're urging appeasement and surrender to the fascists now. The only difference is the fascists then were the Germans. Today, they're the Iranian mullahs. 617-266-6868. More with your calls. Next.
And all they do is scream death to America, death to America. And by the way, they're not screaming it so much anymore. They were screaming it with him. They don't scream it with me. We haven't seen their little boats circling our ships in the ocean lately because they know if they do circle the ships, they're not going to be there very longer.
125 here on the great WRKO. That, of course, was President. I swear I love the guy. That was President Trump. This morning on Fox and Friends, basically warning the mullahs in Iran, hey, easy with the tough military talk if I decide to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. You don't want to mess with the USA. I'm not the dear leader. 617-266-6868. Okay. The Kelly Financial Services poll question du jour of the day, as the French would say. Will the United States pull out of the Iran deal? If you believe the answer is yes, A. If you believe the answer is no, B. You can vote at my Twitter page, at the Kuhner Report, Kuhner, or you can go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. Jared, you're doing a great job, by the way, filling in for Brittany in the booth on that board. You're killing it today. What are the poll results thus far?
82% yes to 18% no.
No. Are you a yes or a no, an A or a B?
I'm an A. I'm a yes. I think this is one of his central things he was going to do, but at the same time, it's a bad deal, and he's pulled out of bad deals before. I think he's going to pull out of NAFTA, too. I think it's going to be a real shock to the globalist system in about, a month and a half.
So, oh, wow. So you think he's not only going to pull out of this Iran deal, you think he's going to put the kibosh on NAFTA?
Absolutely.
Oh, Jared.
For like a week, and then he'll change his mind, and then it'll be negotiated, and then, again, he'll put the kibosh on it. The guy knows what he's doing. Shut it down, come back, negotiate, no, shut it down again.
Maria in Boston. You're up next. Go ahead, Maria.
Hi, Jeff. Hello?
Maria, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I'm not perfect on history, but I was talking to Jared, and wasn't all that money? Didn't that money belong to the Shah, who was essentially a better neighbor than the mullahs were, and they kind of were bad landlords and evicted him and wanted all of his stuff, and that's why we gave it to him.
Yes,
to them.
That was all the Shah's money, and he was our ally, and we left him twisting in the wind.
So why doesn't Trump come out, give everybody a history lesson, and saying that's why I'm gonna get us out of this?
I think he will, Maria. I think, in all honesty, I think once he makes up his mind that he's going to do it, I think he will give a lot of reasons, and I think that will be one of them. Which is, we gave them all this money, and it wasn't even the mullahs' money. It was the Shah's money, who we sold down the river when Jimmy Carter basically pulled the plug on him, allowing the mullahs to seize power in 1979.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. And maybe if everybody has, because Obama gave no one any information. So if you weren't reading history or watching the news, I guess, back in the 70s, we don't have an idea. So maybe if he comes out and tells everybody, step by step what this all entailed, then he'll get more people behind him, more than just us.
Maria, I agree with you. And thank you very much for that call. Thaddeus, I love that name. Thaddeus in Natick. You're up next. Go ahead, Thaddeus.
Jeff, this is is one of those debates that shouldn't even exist here. Remember, what we're talking about is the Iran nuclear deal, or the joint action, comprehensive action plan on this. This is not a treaty. It has no standing in law. It's a bunch of Secretary of States and foreign ministers got around and said, what are we going to try to pretend to do about Iran? And now the Iranians are getting upset that we're stepping away from an agreement about a bunch of that has no standing in law. This while Iran is in violation of a ratified treaty, the Non-Proliferation Pact. That was a treaty ratified by countries. It went through the U.S. Senate. It went through the Iranian Diet at the time. It was ratified. They are in violation. We're walking away from a gentleman's agreement, if you want to call John Kerry a gentleman, and they're blowing a fuse, while for the last 15 years they've been in violation of an international treaty. Trump should just tell them to go pound sand and kick rocks.
Thaddeus, I couldn't have said it better myself. Thaddeus, before I let you go, you're probably aware of this, but you know that the Iranians are not only threatening to blow up our warships, they're threatening to walk away from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, if Trump walks out of the deal. And I'm thinking, how can you do that? That's an international agreement.
They've already walked away from it. They are in violation. The UN has already voted that they are in violation. That was over 10 years ago that they were found to be in violation. It's like me saying I'm going to walk away from a contract that I haven't been abiding by since my kids were 4 years old.
Thaddeus, buddy, you call once in a while. Why don't you call more often? 617-266-6868. Okay, my friends, coming up next, Dr. Ronnie Jackson bows out. A big blow to the president. We'll discuss that. But first, Mike Pompeo is now officially the new Secretary of State. The Senate officially confirmed him. Evan Heidenrich is in the WRKO newsroom. He's got all of those details. What are they, Evan? 1:35 here on the great WRKO. Okay. Dr. Ronnie Jackson goes down, or to be officially technical about it, he withdraws his nomination to be the next Secretary of Veterans Affairs. My friends, in an absolute scandal. I mean, really, just an absolute deplorable travesty of justice. President Trump, as you know, wants to clean up the VA. And so what better man than a doctor? In fact, not just a doctor, not only the president's doctor, but a doctor to 3 presidents. George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and of course, Donald Trump himself. And not only a doctor, but a military man. A man with a long distinguished service in the military. And yet, amazingly, because of a scurrilous smear campaign with all kinds of anonymous accusations against Dr. Ronnie Jackson, there was so much pressure built up against him, with enough Republicans and Democrats saying, we don't want him, we will not vote for him, we will not confirm him. The doctor now had to bow to the inevitable and withdrawn his nomination. And in a nutshell, what were these accusations against Dr. Ronnie Jackson? What was it that he did that made him verboten in the eyes of official Washington? Well, to me, the biggest Judas in all of this, you want to talk about a rat. It was Senator John Tester, Montana Democrat, who, by the way, is up for re-election in November, and Trump is promising he will pay a huge political price for spearheading the charge to knock off Dr. Ronnie Jackson. What John Tester did is he compiled 2 pages of 23 anonymous accusations. There was no name attached to them, no person attached to them, supposedly 23 allegations with no proof whatsoever, never corroborated, never verified, simply just alleged that Dr. Ronnie Jackson was supposedly the Candyman. that according now to the people making these anonymous accusations, they claim that he handed out prescription drugs like they were candy. His big sin was he gave out a lot of sleeping pills or alertness pills. And that he just gave out so many of them so loosely that he was known as the Candy Man in Washington. They claimed that he had a bit of a drinking problem. That at times when he was on the job, people claimed he seemed a little bit intoxicated. And so they were claiming for somebody who likes the bottle too much, for somebody who hands out prescription drugs allegedly like they're candy, he was not morally fit. He did not have the character to be the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And so in the wake of this anonymous whispering campaign, and that's what it was, a whispering campaign, Dr. Ronnie Jackson said, enough is enough. I'm being humiliated. My family's being humiliated. I don't need this. And as President Trump himself said this morning, this is the swamp. This is Washington. This is how they do business here. This is politics. They smear, smear, smear. And you throw enough mud on the wall and you hope some of it sticks. Now, a couple of points, and then I want to throw it open to you. 617-266-6868. This is not just President Trump losing a very important nominee. This is the man that would have cleaned up the VA. This is the man who had the character, the wisdom, the experience, the knowledge. Hell, not only is he a military man, he's a doctor who could have really come in and instituted the right reforms, the necessary reforms to give our veterans the care that they so desperately deserve and have so earned, yet they're not getting. This is not just a blow to the president. This is a major blow to the VA and, most importantly, to the vets who need the help and the assistance of the VA. That, to me, is the obvious point. Now, people don't know this, but Dr. Ronnie Jackson passed 4 independent background checks. Remember, he was Bush 43's, George W. Bush's doctor. He had to go through background checks with that. He was Obama's doctor. He had to go through background checks with that. And of course, he was reappointed, to be Trump's doctor. He had to go through background checks with that. So, if he was this pill pusher that they were alleging, why would George W. Bush have hired him? Why would have Obama kept him? And why would Trump have kept him? If he was supposedly this drunk, why would George W. Bush have hired him? Obama kept him and Trump kept him. In fact, he was such a good doctor, this the liberal media is not telling you. Barack Obama himself recommended that Dr. Ronnie Jackson be elevated and promoted. According to what Obama himself wrote, he has never met a more ethical, professional, skilled, or talented doctor in his entire life than Dr. Ronnie Jackson. And that's why he wanted to promote him within the White House medical staff. So how come when Obama was singing his praises, saying he was the best medical doctor he had ever seen, how come nobody was complaining about him being a drunk then? Or about him being the so-called candy man, going out and handing out prescription drugs like they're candy? Notice, when the dear leader loved him, then the Democrats weren't going crazy about Dr. Ronnie Jackson. Now, all of a sudden, because he's going to clean up the VA, and they know if that he cleans up the VA, the veterans are going to love Trump, and it's going to expose how negligent and incompetent and inept the Obama administration was. So their mission was to sink this man at all costs. Furthermore, and I'm sorry, but this needs to be said. This needs to be said. For 10 years, as you know, I lived in Washington, D.C., or I lived outside of Washington, but I worked in Washington, D.C. I was there for 10 years. I covered the White House and I covered Capitol Hill. And I'm not justifying this. I'm just making an observation. That city, because you have to work so many hours, that city, I'm talking members of Congress, members of the Senate, staffers, you name it. Many of them are working 16, 18, 20-hour days. All of Washington is running on pills. All they do is take uppers and downers. When you're working 18, 20 hours a day and you got to be in meeting after meeting, your body begins to break down. That's why they keep asking for alertness pills, uppers, stay awake. And then, of course, you're all pumped up on these uppers. What do you need? You need downers, sleeping pills to sleep. So I'm not, if he was handing out, sleeping pills or uppers, alertness pills like candy, I'm not defending what he did, if he did do it. But everybody does it. I mean, literally, everybody does it. As for the drinking, please. I mean, half the senators and members of Congress are freaking drunks. I mean, they show up at meetings drunk. They hold committee hearings drunk. I mean, now it's sort of like going into a bordello, a brothel, and everybody's whoring and saying, he's the whore. No, don't cherry pick. Don't suddenly now all of a sudden act horrified. He was handing out sleeping pills? No, I can't believe it. You mean alertness pills, uppers? I can't, no, I can't believe it. You phony, you fraud, you. Everybody on that. I couldn't believe it when I was there. I go, everybody's on pills. They're all working crazy hours, immense stress. Everybody's on freaking pills. Uppers, downers, you name it. Everybody's on it. So for them now to suddenly turn around and say this guy is not fit to be VA secretary, if he's not fit to be VA secretary, you're not fit to be a member of Congress. You're not fit to be a senator by your standards. By your standards. For example, take Ted Kennedy. Okay? The guy was a complete drunk. I saw him over and over again at the Capitol Grill Steakhouse by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, drunk as a skunk. You would have committee hearings at 11 o'clock in the morning. You could smell the alcohol on his breath. They called him the Lion of the Senate. Now, as for Ronnie Jackson being drunk on the job, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Because everybody in Washington says he's one of the best, finest doctors you will ever find. Nobody is going to tell me, with the kind of scrutiny and vetting that you have when you are the doctor to the President of the United States, that they would ever allow a drunk man to be either Bush 43's doctor or Obama's doctor or Trump's doctor. So this was a hatchet job. And remember, I predicted this after Roy Moore. I said, you watch. What the media has now learned, and what the Democrats have now learned, is you just keep throwing one allegation after another, anonymous allegations, and eventually, just by the sheer avalanche of accusations, they get to destroy anybody they want to destroy. And so Trump said, look, I'll back you all the way, but, Dr. Jackson, do you really need this? You are a respected doctor, one of the best, finest doctors in the country. Do you really need to have all these names thrown at you? And to see them destroy your prestige and your credibility and your good name, which you have built up over many, many years? Listen now to Morning Joe Scarborough, a Trump hater like you've never seen. A man now who is out to destroy President Trump. Even Morning Joe says what they did to Dr. Ronnie Jackson was a scandal, a travesty of the highest order. Roll it, Jared.
Amid new allegations, which are
Caddy K,
weird.
Caddy K, either this guy is the most out of control, crazed admiral ever, or This is the biggest
people are lying.
This is the biggest political hit job that we have seen in recent years.
It was the biggest political hit job we've seen in recent years. They destroyed this poor guy. And let me tell you why they destroyed this poor guy. Because when Trump was first elected, and if you remember the big hype, the media hype over his first physical, the media were desperate to now get rid of Trump, and they tried everything. And one of the reasons they were saying he should be removed from office, if you remember, he's not well. He's a sick man. Remember all those stories? Oh, he's got congenital heart disease. He's got heart problems. He's overweight. He's just not physically fit enough to be president of the United States. And of course, he got a physical from Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who came out and said, no, the guy's healthy as a horse. I mean, his weight's a little high, and I think he drinks too much soda, and the junk food, he could ease off on the junk food a little bit. But overall, his cholesterol, his blood pressure, his blood sugar, his heart, his overall condition, the guy's fit as a fiddle. And then the media wanted him at least to claim that Trump was obese, that he was overweight. And for him to be obese and overweight, if you remember that whole brouhaha in the media, he had to be over 240 pounds. Well, guess what? He was actually 239 pounds. And so they couldn't classify him as a quote-unquote fatso, because they wanted him to be classified as a quote-unquote fatso so they can mock him and ridicule him as a quote-unquote fatso. But Dr. Ronnie Jackson said, no, I weighed him, and I'm sorry, but the guy's 239. So technically, he's not considered obese or fat. He's got a big spare tire there, but, he's not overweight. Listen to Dr. Ronnie Jackson address the press in a press conference. Roll it. Jared.
He is in the excellent range from a cardiac standpoint. And that's not me speaking, that's objective data. He doesn't have really a family history of premature cardiac disease. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't have diabetes. A lot of the traditional risk factors he doesn't have. His coronary calcium score is very reassuring. He has a lot of energy and a lot of stamina. Look at his vision. I mean, he's 71 years old, and his bilateral uncorrected vision is 20/30. I mean, he can drive if he wants to without glasses. I mean, he washes his hands frequently. He uses, Purell, and as many hands as he shakes in a day, he'd be a fool not to. It's called genetics.
You want to know why they had to bring down Ronnie Jackson? That's why they had to bring down Ronnie Jackson. It was his corollary calcium score. It was too low, meaning he's not getting a heart attack. So stop fantasizing.
We've actually gotten a lot of nominations this year, but the president has a very legitimate complaint. I've had to file cloture. That's the device by which you stop debate 88 times in the Trump administration. That's more than the last 6 presidents in the first 2 years together.
Even Mitch the Squish McConnell, no friend of President Trump, says, boy, they're out to destroy every nominee the president puts up. Okay, my friends, there is now breaking news. We're going to discuss it at 2:35, I promise. Bill Cosby has now been found guilty on all 3 counts of assault on a woman in his Philadelphia home in 2004. Each count, he could go up to jail to 10 years. So Cosby may be going to jail for a very long time. We're going to be covering that, I promise. First, I want to hear more from you. Bruce in Beverly, you're up next. Go ahead, Bruce.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I think we're getting to the point where I just think a rally needs to be happening in Washington, D.C. to remind both Congress and the Senate that it's time for them to start listening to the people, because it's obvious no matter what Trump does, and he's only one person, these guys are just hell-bent on undoing absolutely everything that this country stands for.
Oh, Bruce, I agree with you. Look, I really think if they can do this to an esteemed and highly respected doctor like Dr. Ronnie Jackson, then I'm telling you, Bruce, they can do it to everybody. Now, what I would recommend to the president is this. Okay, you won't accept my nominees? No problem. I want to privatize the VA. If you won't let me clean up the VA by putting in the best people, then I believe it's time to privatize the VA and give our vets the best health care in the world. Give them a voucher, almost like an EBT card, but like a voucher. And let them go to any private hospital or clinic that they want to get the best treatment in the world. In other words, you won't let me clean up the VA? Then I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to dismantle it and privatize it. That's what I would do if I were him.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're due for a couple of good threats there on Congress, because I'll tell you, these guys are just beyond out of control. I am so ashamed. For years, I voted Republican after seeing how these Republican senior senators and Congress people are reacting to absolutely everything Trump does.
They're cowards. Bruce, I'm telling you, they're cowards. And thank you for that call. Tom in New Jersey. Tom, I've got 1 minute. The floor is yours. Go.
All right, God bless you, Jeff. 2 points and lickety split. Number one, this might be as obvious as today is Thursday, but when President Trump meets with the psychopath in North Korea, meet at a neutral site and be armed to the teeth. Don't trust this guy as far as you can throw him. Number two, Jeff, you're a brilliant historian. Why did Jimmy Carter take down the Shah of Iran, which started all the problems we have today, and Barack Obama put the finishing touches, and it's left in the lap of President Trump to deal with?
The short answer is, Tom, he was an anti-American leftist. Jimmy Carter was a self-loathing American who thought that we were to blame for all the world's problems. And he viewed Iran as a power or a country that we had colonized, we had oppressed by installing the Shah in 1953. And so he thought he was going to redress an historical wrong. And instead, he empowered an Islamist monster. And we are now living with the consequences over the last 40 years. But anyway, speaking of historic wrongs, coming up next, they now vote. It is now official. Yawkey Way has been renamed. Yawkey Way will no longer be the name of that street on Fenway Park. Good move, bad move. We'll discuss that right after this short news break.
The voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 100.7 WZLX HD2 Boston, an iHeart radio station.